In this video, I'm going to talk about how to create virtualized service using Parasoft Soatest. So Parasoft Soatest supports service virtualizations and it supports around 120 protocols and primarily supports HTTP, HTTPS, JMS, TIPCO and other protocol. Apart from that, it supports XML and JSON requests, both SOAP as well as REST. Apart from that, we can create data-driven responders, and it also has a capability to record the request and response using proxy, and we can quickly create virtual services using it. So now you can see this uh, virtual asset explorer on your left hand side, and on right hand side you can see the virtualized server. So Parasoft Soatest actually comes with a Tomcat server, and once we have deploy our virtual services to the Parasoft inbuilt Tomcat server, it is up and ready to use. We are going to talk about in the series of video on how to create virtual service asset for the SOAP request. Assume this is the WSDL file that we have, and this WSDL file provides the city weather by zip code for the US only. The APIs are the get city forecast by zip. So this is the one of the API, get city forecast by zip, and another API, this get city weather by zip, are the primary APIs that uh, this WSDL provided as a service. So get city forecast by zip to get the city forecast over the next 7 days, and this get city weather by zip to get the current city's weather. Okay, assume that the development to implement this WSDL is going on, or the server which is hosting this WSDL is down. In this scenario, we can use the service virtualization to create the virtual assets to provide the API services. Once the assets are created, we can redirect to the virtual assets and use the services uh, rather than using the original one. In the following videos, we can create virtual assets for the servers we will discuss. We're going to talk about how to create a simple virtual asset for the SOAP services. So to do that, first, uh, let me copy this WSDL for this WSDL. Okay, I have opened this WSDL here. So this is the WSDL file for this whole WSDL link. Okay, so what I need to do, I need to copy this whole XML WSDL file. Okay, so I already copied this here. Okay, so this is the WSDL file, and I have saved this WSDL file as a my.wsdl to this location. Okay, this is the file which is containing the WSDL of this WSDL weather, the WSDL which is being used for this weather services. Okay, now let me go to the virtualize Parasoft editions. Okay, here you can see in the left hand side this is a virtual asset explorer. Okay, so for you can see these three folders. Okay, we need to create the virtual services under this virtual asset folders. Means we need the virtual assets under this virtual asset folders, and on the right hand side you can see this is a Tomcat server. Okay, the virtual assets that you create here, uh, it will automatically show up here under this virtual asset folder. Okay, and it will automatically deploy to this server. Okay, and this is the uh, console. Here you can see what's going on as a console messages. Okay, so let's start creating a very small uh, virtual assets for the soap services. So for that, you right click here and click add new. In the add new, you can click this virtual assets file. Okay, and in this file, just give a name first. Let me give the name as a demo1. Click next. And since we are creating this for SOA, so click this whistle, then click next. Here you can either give the whistle URL or you can browse. So this is my whistle file that I have saved earlier. Okay, I'm selecting it. Now I'm clicking this next. Okay, and then finally finish. Okay, when I finish it up, you can see this is a virtual asset in the name of demo1 has created. Let me expand it. Now here you can see this is a responder suites. Under this responder suites, here this is a folder, and inside this folder it has created different uh, responders. Okay, so let me talk little bit about the responders. So if I click this under this folder, if I click this responders, okay, so you can see this different responder specific to protocol, maybe REST, which is for REST API or Swagger, or then you can see the responder for the REML or the SOAP. So responder is depending upon your protocol, the responder will give you the response. Okay, so if your protocol is REST service, then corresponding to your REST service request, the responder will be response. Okay, so that's why I need to select the responder as a REST. If it is a SOAP request, then I have to select the responder as a SOAP. Okay, so once I have created using the wizard, so based upon that XML file, it has created these three responders automatically. So you don't need to create the responders manually. So now you can notice that this is a uh, weather soap and this is the weather soap 12. So this is nothing but 12 is nothing but the different version. So that Whistle is supported uh, dot one version, 1.1 versions and 1.2 versions. Okay. So now coming to this responder, this is the fault one, you can ignore it. Okay, now coming to this focused by zip. Okay, and get city weather by zip. Let me come first to this one. Double click on it and it open up the responder. Okay, and here you can see uh, it is a type, view type is input. So there are different view type you can see here. Okay, input type you can see XML type, literal, many different format it can show you. Okay, we can talk about these different views later on, but first uh, let's talk about this input uh, response, and the form type is input. Okay, just click this enable edit. Okay, once you click this checkbox and double click it, it will open up the response in the input format. Okay, now let me check this, and I want the response text to respond as, let's say, test, state as Washington, then city as a Seattle weather stations. Let's take Redmond. Now here the focused results, right? So I can click edit. Now it will keep open up this table. Just click insert, okay, and then click this focus and ID. Let's talk about one. Then descriptions. Let's say sunny day. So then you click morning. Let's say 5. This is morning low temperature. I'm assuming it's 5. Daytime high. I'm assuming it 10. Okay, let me come to this. This is nothing but probability of precipitations. Night time, let's assume it 5, and daytime, let's assume it 10. Okay, so I want this is this information to respond when someone hit this whistle for this method, focused method. Okay, now one thing is, since we are requesting by zip id, okay, so I need to put in place a correlations that if I am passing on zip, let's assume it is 1, then this information should pass on as a response. Okay, to achieve this, what I next thing that I need to do, I need to go this correlations, responder correlations, and then I need to go to this request body. So why request body? Because when the request will come, that request is also in the form of a XML. Okay, and in that XML it will come as the zip information will come. Okay, and I need to correlate that if the zip is equal to 1, then you return this whole information as a response. Okay, now let me come to here, click add. Now for the zip, let me select one and select its one text. So what I'm telling is, if the zip text is 1, right, then respond this. So this is what the correlations that I have set up. Let me save it. Okay, now once it is set up, right, so once I have created this uh, virtual asset, you can see that virtual asset here, and it is in the enable. These are the all virtual assets, right, corresponding to uh, these assets, and I have make them disable. Okay, to disable it, just right click. To enable it, since it is disabled, you just right click and click here to enable. And similarly, this is enabled right now. To disable, right click and then disable. Okay, now let me double click this demo. If I click this, right, it open up this whole new form, or form, the demo form, and here you can see all the settings. Now the endpoint, the HTTP endpoint for this virtual services, this is the endpoint. Okay, so what I need to do, if I need to hit this one, then I need to use this as an endpoint. Okay, and now I need to enable or start my server. So to start it, just select this and start the server. So once you started the server, automatically server will deploy uh, the enable virtual asset. Okay, So this is how we can create a simple virtual asset for SOAP request. In the next video, we can talk about how can I hit this SOAP request, this responder, and see whether I'm getting the responses for the zip one, and that I will try from SOA test video. We have created the virtual service for the SOAP, and we have uh, created response for the method that the get city focused by zip. Now in this video we are trying to create a SOAP request and hit this virtual service for the zip id one and see whether we are getting the response that we have set up for the zip ID here. So my expectation is that I will hit this uh, virtual service with a zip one, and I should see the data that I have set here for this get city focused by zip method. Okay, so let me go to the SOA test. Okay, so this is my SOA test. Let me close all these things. Let me create a very quick project. So I have to click here, then project, and from the SOA test I am selecting an empty project. Okay, let me give it the name demo1 and finish it off. Now let me right click here and add a new tst file. Okay, the name of the file is my test. Go to next, and I'm selecting SOA and the whistle. Now for the whistle that I'm going to select the whistle what I have saved earlier for the weather whistle that I have saved earlier. Okay, and the same whistle that I have taken to create the virtual assets. Okay, so I'm browsing that my whistle that I have saved earlier. Now I'm going to click next, then again next. Now I'll keep the same default configurations, clicking next, then again next, and finish it off. So once I have finished it off, you can see this tst file has generated. Okay, and inside this tst file you can see these are the tests being created to test this method. And as you are aware that, so this suit has to for the SOAP 1.1 and this is for SOAP 1.2. And since we have created the virtual response for this method, so I'm going to configure that request XML for the zip ID one and try to see whether I'm getting the set response. Okay, let me double click. Now here you can see the request, and that in the form of input, and I can set the zip. Okay, let me enable it. So if I pass on 1, then I should get the response for the zip one. Now you can see a simple difference here in the virtualized format, right? For this method here it is sending a response, and now from the SOA test it is sending a request. Okay, now the request for the form input, let me pass zip one. Okay, now prior to that I need to set few things here. In the environment I need to put a endpoint. If I go here and show you guys, so you can see this endpoint, it is redirecting to the whistle, but whistle is this is not our endpoint. Our endpoint is, this is actually our endpoint, right? Our virtual service actually listening to this endpoint. Okay, so we need to grab this endpoint. I have copied that endpoint, and now I need to come to this file. Here I am pasting it, and let's take a variable endpoint. Okay, I need to copy this endpoint, then I need to come here Okay. Similarly, here I need to change it to custom, and once I change it to custom, then I need to pass on the parameterized form of endpoint. Let me check the format. Okay, 1 second. Okay, now my endpoint is set. What is this? Also save this file. Now my endpoint is set and the request I am passing 1. Let me run it. Okay, now as you know, right, once we run, we need to go to this traffic viewer. So the traffic, that's it. So you can see here I am passing the zip as a 1 and I am getting the response that I have set earlier, right? So you can see the success I'm setting true, state I'm sending Washington, then you can see city as Seattle, weather city Redmond. Now you can remember I have set this as a sunny days, and the morning temperature morning is 5 and 10 respectively, right? Now let me come once again here. Now here you can see this. Yeah, see the state I have set as a Washington, city I have set as a Seattle, and same response I am getting over here. Okay, and this response I'm getting from this virtual assets, the virtual service, and for this method. Now let me try with let me go once again here. Let me change it to 2. Now what will happen if I request with zip id is equal to 2? Okay, let me save it and then once again run it. Now let me come to this traffic viewer. Here you can see I am sending this request with zip id is equal to, and in the response I am not getting any informations. So I am not getting any information because for zip 2, right, there is no zip 2. Okay, so since there is no zip 2, I'm not getting any response. Now let me play with this one, change this value to 2. Okay, save it. Now once I save it, right, you can see automatically it is deployed. Now let's again try this, keeping the request as a 2 and see what happens. Now see the response. That's it. Now for zip 2, I'm getting the response. Okay, so in the next video, I will try to create some data, and I'll try to use these data correlations and see how can we create a set of test data, and based upon my uh, zip IDs, whether I'm able to get those response for the specific zips using this data source correlations. So that will fulfill our requirement for a set of test data for a set of request. In our last video, we created this SOA test, and from the SOA test, we we have we try to trigger or try to trigger this request to our virtualized service, passing by the zip ID, and try to validate whether we are getting the response uh, according to the zip ID or not. Now, in this video, what I'm going to try is you know implement a data source and keep multiple zip ID in the data source, and from the data source uh, pick one by one the zip ID and then try to trigger to our virtual virtual service. Okay, and for that, what I need to do, I need to come this suite, test suite, then go to add new. Okay, now click this data source. Okay, now you can see here there are different types of data source you can add. You can add as a CSV file, you can Excel, database, file, right? There are different types of data source you can add. Let me select this table. Okay, I have selected this and now I'm clicking finish. So it is come a new data source. Uh, Data source, you can see this new data source window of form here. Let me name it my data. And now, since I need to pass multiple zip, right? 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now let me check this checkbox. So once I check this checkbox, it will treat this first row as a column. Okay, now let me save it. Now let me go to this test. Okay, now here you can see the data source that I have created. It is now visible here in this data source drop down. Since I have only one data source, so it is showing only one at this moment. If you have a multiple data source, then in the drop down it will give you those multiple data sources. Okay, now coming to the request, here you can see I fixed it to the 2 because in our virtual service the response is set for the zip 2. Okay, let it be set for zip 2, and let me come to the SOA test. Just select the parameterized. Now once you select the parameterized, you can see that it is coming automatically coming as a zip. What it it is doing in the backend, that it is trying to relate this one with this data source columns. Okay, so since I have only one column there, so it is by default it is selecting the zip. If I have multiple columns over there, then all those columns will be listed here in the drop down, and then I need to select uh, the appropriate column. Okay, now since there is only one, right, let's keep it as zip and let me save it. Okay, I'm saving all. Now let me run it and it will give you a better idea how what exactly happened. Okay, let me run it. Let me click this run. Now you can see it is running. You can see it is running for three times. Okay, the three times because in our table we have a three entries. Okay, you can see the zip id 1, zip id 2, and zip id 3. That's why it is running three times. If I have 5 entries, then it will run for the 5 times. Okay, now let's go to the traffic viewer. So here you can see the data source row, right? You can see here data source row 1, 2, and 3. Let's select 1. So now here you can see I'm passing this request zip is equal to 1, and I'm in the response I'm not getting anything because here in the service virtual service it is set for 2 and no virtual service is set for 1. That's why I am not getting any response for zip id 1. Okay, let me change to the zip id 2. Now you can see I'm getting a response for the zip id 2 because here the zip id is set for 2. Now let's change it to zip id 3. Now you can see here again I'm not getting any response because the zip 3 is not configured here. Okay,